Alright, welcome to another video. This time I'm showing you a Dara holster that I got in along with the mag pouch that they make. This is their level 2 duty holster that they have. And I've been looking for a holster for my CZ Shadow, my Shadow 2, which has been surprisingly hard to find actually. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of holsters available for the Shadow 2. But there's not a lot of level 2 duty style holsters, which is what I was looking for. Most of the holsters that you can find out there for the Shadow are these, like race type competition style holsters. And I was looking for something a little more sturdy, a little more like a duty holster with the level 2 retention. So there's just not a lot of options out there. Fortunately, Dara has one. This is it. I'm going to go over some of the goods and a little bit of the bad here. So I also got with it these mag pouch holders that they make. These are a lot like the tacos, the HS high-speed gear tacos. Very similar in design. Now they use a different type of retention system here, so it's not just that stretch paracord. This is an actual rubberized system, and it's supposed to be extremely durable. It's supposed to be very, very good, for lack of a better word. Sorry guys, I'm a little bit of word vomit here today. But anyway, yeah, so this one, again, similar to the taco design. Now this one has a screw here that you can adjust the height. I have it set all the way down for longer magazines, so if, say you've got like a Shadow mag, it just goes right in. It's gonna stick up there. But if you've got something like a Glock 19 mag, this is how it's going to fit, and it doesn't stick out quite as much, obviously, because it's a shorter mag. So you can use this to raise that bottom up a little bit, so it'll kind of stick out more like that, if that's what you want to do. So that's pretty cool. That's a nice feature. So as you can see, it works well with those. If you're curious, it also works with, say, like a G43 magazine. The single stack goes in just fine, works extremely well also. So I highly recommend these. I recommend a lot of stuff, but again, no sponsorship here. They didn't send me this of their own free will. Well, I guess they did, but I had to pay for it. So this is my own money that I'm spending. I'm not sponsored or anything like that. This is the woodland camo that I got. It comes in a few different options. They have this little wrap that goes around it, and you can get them now with or without the logo. I went ahead and got the logo on it, but it just so happens that, with the woodland, with these patterns, it just depends on what part of the cloth gets cut, right? And it just so happened that this one is mostly just brown and black. There's a little bit of green on the sides. I think you can see a little bit here, but yours is going to look a little bit different if you get this, but that's fine. I just liked the woodland camo pattern, but they have a few different other options available as well that you can get. Now this came mounted with this is their quick belt loop system, I believe is what they call it, and it's very, very similar to the Blade Tech tech mount, I believe is what they call it. A very, very similar system. The only difference really is kind of how they lock and attach, right? So on the Blade Tech, you've got this little piece here that folds up and down, and that locks it in place, and then you squeeze these in and pops up, and then you've got this little bar that you can move to adjust your belt with, and you have all these screws that you can adjust the cant or the height right or whatever like that. So that's how the Blade Tech works, and that locks in like that. This works very, very similar, just slightly different manual of arms, if you will. So the locking pieces, there's actually two, one on each side, that locks it in place, and then instead of squeezing in, you squeeze up on these pieces, and then that pops it up. And once again, you've got the bar here that you can adjust for your belt width. Now this one does require screws, whereas this one just pops in and out. But you can adjust your belt width and kind of how high you want it to ride. And again, you've got some cant options here for the for the mounting part there with the screws. So very similar system, very well put together. Which one's better? I think they're pretty much about the same, to be honest with you. But that's their system. That's what I got for this one. You can run this on a battle belt, but I'm probably just going to leave this set up where I could just run it like on my EDC belt. because I'm not planning on using that. I have the tacos for my battle belt, so I'll be using this kind of as a more of an everyday type thing that I can just throw on if I need to. So moving on to the holster, this is their level 2 duty holster, and it comes with a drop offset that's got the space for the leg strap if you need it. And again, I got the same mounting system. There's a few different mounting systems you can get, but I went ahead and just went with this mounting system. So it's the exact same system that just does that, and you put it on your belt. Now, the good and the bad on this. The bad part is I was really looking for a light bearing holster for my Shadow 2, and they do make this style holster with a light bearing option for some models. They also make a light bearing version for the Shadow 2. The problem is the only light bearing version they have for the Shadow 2, the only option is with the Streamlight weapon light mounted onto it. They do, for whatever reason, they don't have the Shadow 2 with the Surefire X300, which is what I have. And I find that odd because they do have the X300 as an option on other models that you can get for a light bearing holster. So, I mean, they have the mode for it, they have the lockup system for it, obviously, but for whatever reason, it's not an option for the Shadow 2. So if you have a Shadow 2 and you want a light bearing holster from Dara, you're stuck with the Streamlight for some reason. I don't know why they don't offer that with the Surefire, since they have the mold for both and the locking system for both. I'm not understanding that, but it is what it is. So instead of getting a light bearing holster, I got this, which is the non-light bearing. Not a huge deal, but it was a little bit of a disappointment that I just didn't have that option to choose from when that option's available for other models, because you go on their little pull down menu and you'll see other guns that have options for both Streamlight and the Surefire, but not the case with the Shadow. So whatever. Moving on to the holster itself, it's Kydex. You know, it's a pretty traditional Kydex setup where it folds over and you've got these retention pieces here, so you can crank it down or loosen it up a little bit. I did have to loosen it a little bit. It was cranked down pretty tight. So it's got some really good retention just the way it comes. And then again here you can adjust the cant a little bit if you need to. This is pretty much just straight up and down right now. But you've got plenty of room for your optic. That fits just fine. I think they give you a couple of different options too for the optic. This is just the 507K and it's the regular height. I think they have an extended one if you have a larger one, but this fits in just fine. As you can see, it's got retention. It's a typical retention Kydex holster, and then on top of that it's got the hood that flips up and locks into place to prevent it. So kind of that's your level 2 right there. Now, unlike my other holsters that you may have seen, which is the 511 level thumb drive holster that I have, that I use a lot, unlike these, this one, you know, you push the button and it's a very smooth release. There's no extra retention besides that lock in place for the button. So the button unlocks it and then you can pull it out. This one's a little bit different in that the button doesn't release the gun. The button releases the hood, and that's it. So once the button's been pressed and the hood's out the way, you don't need the button for anything else. You can just kind of pull it straight out because it's got that standard retention. Now, I did find that it tends to be easier to get it out, and I'm going to try to cut in some B footage here. So the way the button works on here is it simply releases the hood. At that point, you've just got pure retention, just like a standard Kydex holster at this point. So you can just pull it up. Now, depending on how much tension you have, this crank down. Again, I don't have it cranked down too hard, but enough that it's not just going to pop out, right? as you can see, just pulling up on it is going to want to make that holster kind of pop up like this. Now you can run a leg strap through here, which will help mitigate that, but just simply pulling up on it will release the gun. But if you're doing it kind of slow or lightly, you could get a lift like that, right? Now the technique I like to use, and this goes back to the 511 holster, which I'll demonstrate in a minute, is the best way I can describe it is kind of like, in my mind, I'm thinking of a trampoline, right? So instead of just pushing the button down and then trying to release, what I'm doing kind of in my head is acting like I'm jumping off of a trampoline. So I want to go with a down motion and then kind of bounce up with it. And that's kind of what I'm using that thumb trigger for. So rather than just release it, I'm going down and coming up. And that gives me a much quicker, smoother draw, which I find tends to work with these a lot better, like that. So that might help someone else, maybe. I don't know if it makes sense that way, and again, I'll demonstrate with the other holster in just a second. But that kind of bouncing trampoline motion is what I'm talking about. So again, just a regular Kydex retention in here, and you can crank that down, make it a little bit tighter if you want, and then the hood is your second level of retention. But that's pretty much how that works, and it's a pretty good draw if you get the technique down right. If you're just kind of going slow, and you know, you're going to get that tug, and it's not going to come out quite as smooth. Let me switch holsters and I'll show you what I'm talking about on the other holster. Alright, so this is the 511 holster with the thumb drive release, and I've got it hooked up to my duty drop here, the Blade Tech that I've shown in another video. So this one sits a little bit lower, but the process is pretty much the same. Now, unlike the Dara holster, this holster, when you push the button, there's no more tension. It just comes out smooth. The lock, the trigger guard lock, is the only thing keeping this in. There's no additional retention level. So when you push the button, smooth pull out. Now this is designed so that you have to push the button first before you release. You can pull the gun out. If there's any tension on that gun to begin with, if you're pulling up on it at all, and then you push the button, it is not going to come out. And I'm pulling on it right, you can see how much I'm pulling on it. It's not coming out. So this is where I developed that technique that I just told you about, the trampoline idea in my head. Because if you're trying, it's easy to push the button and pull it out slowly. But if you're trying to do this in a quick scenario and you're really trying to kind of line those up, you know, that sequence of events really quick, and you're trying to do those at the same time, it can be hard to get it just right. You've really got to nail it down and get that sequence just right, which can be tricky in a high stress situation. So to kind of mitigate that and get around that, I use that trampoline system that I'm talking about in my head, where it's, you can probably see it better here than in the other one, but that's kind of how, that's my method. That's how I practice and train with this. And it just makes it super, super quick. Super easy. Okay, so that time I caught myself, but it just makes it super, super quick and super easy to come out. Very smooth. And so I'm going down and I'm like a trampoline, bouncing off of that and using this to kind of push up at the same time. And that's the method that I like to use, which I find works well with that Dara holster, because it's got that extra level of retention, and instead of getting it to pull up like that, if you use that method, it works for me. So hopefully that'll work for you. Hopefully that might make sense to some people, and that might help somebody who's using a similar system. If they're using a holster like this, or even the Dara holster, and they find that it's kind of tugging a little bit and you're not quite getting it, maybe try that. You know, think about the trampoline idea, and that might give you a better concept, a better grasp of the method of doing it and how to practice. And if you train that way and you get it right, you know, the more you train that way, the more you're going to get it right. That's what I should say. But there you go. That's how I do it. But just to reiterate with the Dara holster here, you know, again, that hood you can push and then try to pull up to relieve the tension just like a standard holster, but you may get that movement there. So the trampoline concept is what I like to use for a smoother draw like that, and that's kind of how I approach it. I hope that helps somebody. But there's an example. There's a Dara holster and the level 2 retention and how that works. But that's pretty much how it works. So it's also got this cutout here if you cock the hammer all the way back. And yes, this is a safe gun. I know we always, no magazine, empty chamber, safe gun. If you have it cocked all the way back, this little notch right here will allow you to lock the hood back as well. So you can carry it cocked and locked also. So pretty cool. I do like the holster. I just wish that there was the light bearing version for the Shadow 2 with the Surefire light, the X300. I don't know why that's not available. But other than that, I do like the holster. Good solid option. These are a good option too. So Dara holsters, go check them out. Don't have much else to say about it at this point. Pretty sure I covered everything. So I hope my rambling made a little bit of sense to you guys, and I hope that helps if you're looking at these, the Dara holsters made here in the US. Go check them out, see what they got, see if they got something that you like, and like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching.